So just to briefly go over our agenda today, there'll be a brief welcome, a little bit of background on Blaze IT and our tool that we use, Acumatica, the partnership we have there, and then also let you learn a little bit more about Synatic. The Synatic team will be going into a little bit deeper dive on their product, and then we'll get into some thought leadership discussions between David and Jamie. So David Dozer is the president of Blaze IT, and Jamie Pierce is the vice president over at Cinetic. We'll follow that up with a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to send them to me in the chat, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. A little bit about Blaze IT is we are based in Houston, Texas. We do travel as permits. Not so much the past year, but we're starting to get back into things. We were named one of CIO Review's top 20 ERP solutions for 2021. So we're pretty excited about that. And we work a lot with customers that are on old software, using spreadsheets, using disparate systems to run their businesses, and put them all together into one source of truth. We work a lot with industrial clients, distribution, manufacturing, and food and beverage customers. So over here at Blaze IT, we focus on ERP, warehouse management software, and business automation and integrations. So that being said, I will pass it over to David, since you guys are here for the webinar to learn a little bit more, and he'll be taking us through that. After David speaks, we'll be passing it over to the team at Synatic.
Great, thanks so much, Renee, and appreciate everyone again for joining the webinar today. And really what we want to do is take you through what a modern solution looks like and what that framework for integration really looks like to set your business up for success and to get rid of silos of information and kind of that transformation from an old analog type of business system into modern technology and ultimately to a digital business, which requires a good platform, a good baseline for that, and then products like Synatic to help pull in things from outside to make sure all your data is in sync. So it really is important as we're looking at solutions to make sure that solution is going to support your business and the investment that you're putting in your business there. Just a quick slide here. A lot of companies are starting to invest in digital transformation, and those companies are really outperforming their peers. So as you look at the slide there, up at the top portion, all the companies that have either started to invest in digital transformation and or are planning for that transformation are really seeing a growth in revenues year over year, and especially with the pandemic and how that's sort of switched how business happens, transforming from old paper-based businesses and really starting to integrate your systems and disparate systems that maybe in the past have existed in multiple locations, and getting all that into one kind of point of truth, so to speak. And a term you're going to hear us use a lot throughout the rest of the webinar today is going to be a connected business. And so what do we say when we mean connected business? That's really taking all of the different functional areas of your organization and combining those into one platform or one truth, so to speak. So just as an example, you may have manufacturing operations, you've got inventory management, you've got to manage all of those things with projects, you may even have field service technicians, and all of that's kind of encompassed with a CRM solution as well. So as Jamie gets in later today and talking about, what are the big kind of issues with system integration and how to overcome those, keep that connected business in mind. And, at Blaze It, we really like to leverage the Acumatica system to help create a foundation for that connected business. And along with that connected business is really talking about a resilient business. Again, kind of going back to what's happened over the past couple of years here, how business has changed. A lot of companies have really found that they had information in a lot of different places and didn't really even realize it until the pandemic, and all of a sudden finance was in one spot. The logistics folks were, working out of their house in another spot. The factory may or may not have been working, and all of a sudden people were dispersed. And that really brought to light a lot of the issues, so to speak, around the interactivity of data and the working together of data. So, one thing that we've tried to do with our business is really help companies understand that, get around those challenges, and connect their business, put together a platform for that remote collaboration that needs to happen, and ultimately future-proof their business as well. And that's going to be a really important theme too, because as you're thinking about integrating information from different systems into a single platform, you're really wanting to look for a system that's going to not just work today, not just work in 5 years, but be around and work for you in 10, 15, 20 years, and keep up with the changes that are happening, not just in your business, but in the outside world as well. And Acumatica really provides that platform for an integrated business. And because when you have access from anywhere, on any device, and any time, so whether it's a desktop computer, an iPad or a tablet, your phone, even like an Apple Watch, or even being able to interact with your data through like Amazon Alexa or Google devices, that's really important when we're talking about this integration of data and this collaboration between people that are in multiple places and really need to go back again to that one point of truth and see everything that's happening within their business. And another really kind of important thing as we're talking about integrating data is getting information back out of the system. So, for example, if we're pulling data in from machines out on the shop, we're getting data from people out in the field, we need to be able to report on that. That's where Acumatica as well comes in very handy and is very strong with a kind of standard no-code ad hoc custom reporting system, as well as tie-ins to other systems. So data is really only as powerful as as what you can do with it. So visualizations, reports, graphs, the interactivity with that data is really of paramount importance. Just kind of taking scale of a platform into account. So Acumatica in general, we're running millions of transactions through the system per month. So again, as you're talking about moving data and integrating data from multiple sources into one spot, you've got to really think about the ability to scale with that. So what that means is having a platform that's going to allow you to process, huge volumes of data if necessary. So if you're integrating data with Amazon, Shopify, BigCommerce, even EDI type of transactions, you need a system that's going to be able to account for that. So, maybe you're starting off small, and that's fine, but over time, you're going to ramp up and grow into kind of a larger type of business where you need to be able to handle large volumes of data. And, not getting buzzwordy, but, people talk about big data. Well, that's great, but you also need to think about big data internally as it relates to your system and the ability to handle, high volumes of transactions. And again, that's where Acumatica has really flourished in handling that data, and where Cinetic comes into play with integrating with outside sources of data that may be independent from the ERP system. I want to talk a little bit about the framework of Acumatica and how that really sets us up to be successful when we're talking about integrating with other outside type of systems. So Acumatica is unique in that it actually started out as a platform, as a business platform, as opposed to a ERP system or an ERP system in the most traditional sense of the word. If you look down at the bottom of the slide there, there's really a robust technology stack that Acumatica is built on. And then on top of that is actually a kind of not even development platform, but low code, no code type of framework where all the bits and pieces are built. And then that moves into different modules, different additions. And then finally at the top layer, connected applications from the outside. What that means is it's very scalable, much easier to integrate with those outside applications than like a legacy type of ERP system, and really gives you a lot of flexibility and scalability, not just for your business, but for working with outside information as well. Now, on top of that, the base platform really focuses a lot on continuous improvement and making the product bigger, better, and giving you much more value for your business as well. So that's things like machine learning, doing OCR type of scanning to automatically create documents, creating automation rules to get rid of a lot of mundane tasks and a lot of drudgery of very data entry intensive things. So really, again, making sure that you get the transactions that you need, but really letting your people focus on process and making the business better, as opposed to just sitting there and typing in information all day long. Then finally, when we're looking at a modern type of system and talking about moving data back and forth, security is obviously of paramount importance. And that's something that the folks at Acumatica and at Blaze IT take very seriously. And the platform itself has enterprise-grade type of security, can turn on like two-factor authentication, a lot of built-in tools to make sure that, you know, not only is your information safe and locked down to the outside world, but it's also safe and locked down internally. So as we're moving data back and forth from multiple systems, you want to make sure that certain folks, you know, if there's information coming over from a payroll system, for example, then only the people that need to see that and interact with that have the ability to do so. So all those security tools are built into the product. And it also helps you keep up with certain types of compliance, because the compliance and outside security world is always kind of changing and evolving. So, you know, if you have things like certain SOX compliance, GDPR compliance that you need to keep up with, Acumatica as a product keeps up with those things. And as those rules change, the product is keeping up to date and changing with those. So it helps you maintain those sort of compliances. So finally, what we really want to point out before I turn it over to Jamie here and really getting into the meat and potatoes of the integration challenges and how to solve those at your business, is talking about Acumatica as a platform and the ability for it to absorb data or import and work with data from outside systems. So in general, within the Acumatica ecosystem, there's over 240 already integrated solutions, and you know, Cinetic is one of those solutions that works with Acumatica, and those are kind of out of the box sort of things where, you know, Acumatica is working with these other solutions to create a whole ecosystem. So today there's so many systems that, you know, you kind of have to work independently and you're transposing data, or integration becomes a very huge challenge because of the fact that, you know, maybe your systems are older and you're having to write special code, really getting into programming to handle all of that. And it can just be a lot of work. And where Synatic really comes into play, and where we're very excited to partner with them, is giving us that ability to set up the baseline with Acumatica and then really connect everything else into the system. So for example, if you've got machines on a shop floor and you can get PLC information from those machines, Synatic as a tool set allows you to easily map that sort of information back into Acumatica. So if you want to get, you know, run times, completion of materials, those sort of things can all be imported back in. If you've got other outside systems, whether they're homegrown or, you know, other products that you've purchased and you still want to get value out of those products, Synatic again is a very great tool that creates a bridge between those sort of disparate outside systems and products, whether it's e-commerce, CRM, payroll, those sort of things, and lets you map that information back into Acumatica. So again, coming back to a modern solution where you're getting one source of truth and everyone kind of knows, okay, we go into the Acumatica ERP system, and this is where we see all the information about our business. And that's where integration and the working between outside systems and the internal ERP system becomes so important. And Acumatica and Blaze IT really let you set that foundation in place to create that holistic system. So we'll be around at the end of the session here for some additional questions and answers. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, the Vice President of Business Development at Synatic, and let him really get into, you know, what those integration challenges are, and how him and his team can help you all solve those sort of challenges.
Hey, thanks everyone for joining our session today. I'd like to share a little bit about what are our top 5 challenges in the integration environment. Just want to check you all can see my screen, right?
We can see it, Jamie, and we can hear you over here at Blaze IT at least.
Great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we do and what our solution does initially, and then move on and talk a little bit about just those specific challenges in the integration world. So where we started off Cinetic as we actually started off as a ETL engine, and what we started going down the journey of was a business called File Pounder, so pounding files into legacy solutions. And as we started growing that out, we recognized that we could do work with APIs as well as files, and then we started working with databases, and we just grew out a whole platform that could really move data dynamically between multiple solutions. We find a lot of the time people will look to either an ETL solution or an integration solution or an API management solution or a warehouse. And really what we do dynamically at Synatic is we focus less on naming those tool sets and more on talking about what do you need to do to get the right data to the right person in the right system at the right time. And that's really what we focus on as our business and where we're going strategically in terms of wanting to get data moving around the organization. We do that through a platform. So we do have an integration platform, a data automation platform, and we focus on 3 core tenets there. So nimble, simple, powerful. So nimble, rapid time to business value, reducing implementation times and moving dynamically with the customer's requirements. Simplicity, so we talk about bringing the simplicity of Zapier to the complexity of MuleSoft and landing in between the two. And that means that we can deal with your more simple integration requirements, but we can deal with MuleSoft's complexity as well, because very often a basic integration engine won't necessarily deal with all of the complexity that revolves around the data movements that you need to perform. Also critically, bringing that warehouse into Synatic itself as a platform means that you can bring data together, centralize a single view of the customer, and publish that up to a Power BI application or Tableau or Click or whatever your bring your own BI looks like. And then powerful, no compromise on enterprise grade features and functionality and scalability. So that's kind of a little view of what we do. We talk about our platform being not just no and low code. So we talk about our platform being your code as well. So no code, low code, your code. So no and low code is the draggy, droppy type vibe where you can drag and drop widgets on to connect different systems. Your code is the ability to write your own code in Synatic if you need to. So if you need to do custom transformations of data, you can do that. So I was thinking in terms of today's session, like you really want to try and hit home with the most important point first up, and that's typically the one that gets remembered the best. And I came up with this phrase, it's sort of like FOMO, so fear of missing out, except this one's fear of getting started. So and I think it's a pervasive thing in life, really, is we tend to, as humans, look at a long journey, a lengthy journey ahead and go, well, I've got so far to go, what's the point in taking the first step? And especially when we take that first step, even worse still is if we fail at that first step and we look up and we go like, our destination's so far away, it can be a daunting task. And really in the integration environment, we often find that folk struggle to just get going. It's like that breaking the ground on developing a new building. It's making that first movement. And the reason why is because it's where do I start and how do I start and what does that first step look like? And what we encourage people to do is it's more about what your needs are and what your burning issue is than selecting the bang on right tool and going through many iterations of tool selection and where does it fit and how does it fit, and more about saying, well, does something work for right here, right now? Can it help me take my first step? Take the first step. And we talk about an iterative delivery process. So we talk about micro innovation leading to macro innovation. So those iterative small steps lead to a greater innovative and innovation journey. And really it's about breaking ground and taking that first step and realizing that that's probably going to be learnings. It's going to be probably tougher than you think, but that's okay, because there's learnings of how to be nimble and how to deliver iteratively. And really where we consult to our customers and through our valuable partners like Blaze is we really go and seek out those burning issues. So what's setting your hair on fire, and how do we unpack that and fix that? And then once we fix that, what we do is we go and say, well, you know, we go through an iterative process to fix that burning issue, and then we go and say, well, what's your next burning issue? And then we go and fix that. And then what's your next burning issue? And we go and fix that. And it tends to be a better way to approach. I think the mistake that the heady, expensive, cumbersome, if we're honest, integration engines have made is that because you have to invest $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 into those platforms, what ends up happening is you think you have to launch a 12-month project to deliver ROI, and everyone's focused on ROI of this big income statement expense item, and really that's not what it should be about. It should be about saying, well, fix that issue and move on to the next one. But fear of getting started is a real prevention in the integration space, and it's a challenge to overcome that and to get people on that journey. One of the other things is there's been a proliferation of integration tools, of new tech that's come out in this space, and how do you make a selection of the right tool for the job? You know, you can go through a similar process with ERPs. So, I mean, I fully believe Acumatica is one of the, if not the best, preeminent mid-market ERP in the space at the moment. But there are still alternatives. You still have to go through your selection process, like Dynamics Nav or Dynamics BC, NetSuite, etc. And you can get as locked into you know, decision paralysis there as well, in terms of having analysis paralysis of many tools to look at. Again, what I'd look to there is saying, well, set out your long-term goals and be relatively sure that the tool you're selecting now has longevity in it and you're future-proof for that. But again, I would err on the side of getting momentum versus perfection. And we talk a lot about that in our business, as in internally as Synatic. We talk a lot about momentum versus perfection. And with momentum, you can perfect and shape your journey. If you're not moving forward, you can't perfect and shape your journey, because fundamentally you aren't journeying anywhere, you're stagnant. So again, it's that same principle of design where you want to be at, iterate through your burning issues now, and go on that journey and be in the journey, because once you're in the journey, you can shape that direction and shape where you're going. The worst thing you can get stuck in is 6 months, 12 months of analysis paralysis, where you sit going through lists and reams of features and benefits, and you don't just kick off. And at some point, it needs to be that press over the precipice and get going. We do want to look at tools that do hybridize a level of data. Nowadays, clients are a lot less concerned with, is it an ETL solution or is it an integration solution, and more interested in fundamentally that getting your data to the right person in the right system at the right time. And that's what we really want to focus on, is, does the tool facilitate that process? If yes, then checkbox, let's kick off. One of the factors of digital transformation per se that people often forget is getting buy-in from your team, that have to change the way in which they work with your solution, within your business. Sorry. So fundamentally, it's actually as much a cultural change as it is systems change, because all of a sudden this person who was perhaps capturing data in Salesforce has now got to not capture that data in Acumatica, because the data is flowing automatically, which is great, nothing wrong with that. But does the person feel disenfranchised? Do they feel like their job is under threat? Do they feel like, you know, the age-old, the robots are taking over? So really what you want to look at there is getting buy-in for the rest of the team, so that they can go and say, cool, we're on board with this. And a big part of that is actually articulating the benefit. It's not, we're not just randomly plucking a change out of thin air and going and making a change and doing it for the sake of it. We're going and specifically making the business better and more efficient. And I often find a good phrase to use there is, we're giving you time to think about your job as opposed to do your job, or think within your job versus doing your job. So what you really want to do is and everyone talks about their human capital, or their resources, or their employees, or their partners, whatever phrase you want to use around that, being the most critical portion of their business. And it differentiates businesses. Now, the basic underlying premise there is, the more you automate processes, the more you automate system interactions, the more people can bring creativity to work and bring fresh ideas to work, etc., etc. Cool. So in this fragmented world of so many pieces of data, customer centricity is a real issue for folk at the moment. And it's interesting, I was reading a white paper earlier from Gartner, and they're talking specifically how even up until probably about 10, 15 years ago, people really thought that there was this utopia of SAP answers everything, or Oracle answers everything, or, you know, SAP Business One answers everything because it's a modules, sorry. And even Acumatica has got CRM within it, and it's got warehouse management and inventory management. But what we're finding more and more is the world shifting to this place where there are fit for purpose pieces that we surround our core systems with. And the reality is that those fit for purpose solutions each have a critical little bit about your customer's journey, about your customer's usage of your products, engagement with your business, so on and so forth. They've got that little bit of data locked inside them, and not being able to unlock that data and use it to either automate your next business process or to report on that data is a real prevention to unlocking how you retain customers and how you augment customers. So in today's age, especially with dealing with folk remotely, it is that extra notch more difficult to retain customers and to augment customers, because the sales cycles have been disrupted by this digital world we've entered into, where we get a lot less physical access to people. So bringing your customer story together into a customer-centric model, so that you can get a view of what is going on with your customers is absolutely paramount, and definitely one of the greatest challenges we see. And we see it across the board, anyone from warehouse management to online shopping to CRMs, and bits of data sits all over the place, and it's just distributed. And how do you bring that together? I wrote an article a while back called "You Should Know Me Better by Now," and likened the whole process to, you have so many facts about me, why do you not know how I want to interact with you better, and with the voice of speaking to the business and as a customer. And if I'm in a real person debate with somebody who knows me well, they'll know my views, my points of views, my belief set, etc., etc. So if you as a business have so much data around your customer, you should almost be able to predict that customer, or at least have enough information around the customer to know what their needs are at any one point in time. And that is one of the monstrous challenges facing the industry at the moment. And then naturally, there've been a couple of security issues coming out recently, and that also ranks right up there. Is you need to make sure your SOC 2 is in place from a vendor selection point of view, and just make sure your data is safe, that your PIA process is in place. It's particularly pertinent at the moment, just with the pressure on data and how much data is flowing around the industry. So that was my view on the top 5 challenges facing the industry at the moment. David, back to you, if that's okay.
Perfect. Yeah, really appreciate it, Jamie, and hopefully that kind of tied everything together, and that any sort of digital transformation effort there, really is about deciding that we need to make a change, making that change, and then kind of taking that to the next level and acting on that change as well. So it's more than just data. It's not just moving zeros and ones back and forth. There's a whole organizational component that really goes along with that as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Renee. If there's any questions that we can answer, and Jamie and I are happy to kind of stick around and chat a little bit here as well. And appreciate everyone's time today. Oh, sorry, we can't hear you.
I think you're on mute, Renee.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I was on mute. I was too excited by watching your guys' presentation. We did have a couple of questions come into the chat. So I will start out with the first one for you guys. It says, what is the big plus for using an integration platform? Great question.
Yes, I'll kind of throw that one over to you, Jamie. And really, what's the big thing to consider when looking at an integration platform like that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing there is that you've got 2 choices. Is either you do swivel chair integration, which is a human being sitting there on their chair swiveling around, re-entering data on either side, or you put in a translator. And really, you can either write that translator. So the analogy I use there is you can get a physical translator in place, or you can get a Google Translate to go and translate it for you. And that's really the analogous statement there. The biggest thing with writing your own code is you create every single line of code that is written is a line of technical debt. So what that means is it's something that has to be maintained. It's something that has to be error checked. It's something that if it causes errors, somebody has to go and fix that error that's come through. So there is a lot of unintended consequences around integrating through code. So what you end up with is you end up with something that invariably at some point in time, and not even invariably, it just will have to be factually rewritten at some point of time. And that is probably your biggest driver to actually use an integration engine. And like, we're super pragmatic about this as Synatic. Like, if you need super simple, like moving G Sheet contacts into Acumatica as contacts, Zapier's great at that. It costs next to nothing. It's $50 a month. Don't use Synatic, use Zapier. It's the best solution. It's the best solution for the job at hand. So like, why would we go and say like spend more money just because we want to sell our product? It doesn't make sense. But even with those simpler tools, even if you write that code manually, there will be a degree of technical debt there. And then I always talk about integration being 50% integration, 50% support. So very often the supportability of that code is an issue. So if you're sitting there and you need to get a customer order through from Shopify into Acumatica and it's not coming through because your integration's not working, like, you could give two hoots if somebody broke it or somebody didn't break it or whatever it is. You just want that stuff to work.
Right.
And having code to support in that means you need to go back to find the developer who wrote it, to find out if he's not working on other stuff, to go and fix it, and then maybe he doesn't fix it right the first time, so it creates a level of mess.
There's a lot of invisible overhead that goes along with all
Indeed.
that. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. We got a few more questions, so not to rush you guys, but I don't want to keep anybody over their lunch break today. So the next question we had was, how do I decide what direction that data should flow?
Yeah, that's a really good one, and maybe you can help with that as well, Jamie. So I know when we've worked with folks in the past, there's always sort of a discussion of what system should own the data. So, you know, if we're talking about things like customers, suppliers, kind of master data, you know, is that really kind of a discovery to say, you know, should it be the outside CRM? Should it be Acumatica? Should it be both directions? You know, what have you kind of seen in your implementations?
So I'll start with the last one you spoke of, which is both directions. We try best possible not to go with that. And the reason why is because it creates business confusion and it creates people updating and having kind of like an integration bun fight over, they update their, you know, Salesforce record and it gets updated in Acumatica, and then the Acumatica person updates it again and it goes back to Salesforce, and there's like a little tennis match going on there, you know. So we try to recommend against that. Usually with master data information, the rule of thumb is whichever system is going to have the most comprehensive record of the data at hand should be the master of the data. So typically when, like, let's take a creditor, for example, and loading a creditor, do you want a creditor to sit in your CRM where there aren't bank details and on credit checks and vets, etc., or do you want it to sit in Acumatica? And sorry, I'm using Salesforce and Acumatica a lot, but that's just
that's all right.
fairly ubiquitous. But in Acumatica, you're going to have your credit vets, your credit checks, your sign-off processes, and you're going to have the most comprehensive record. The same thing comes for a line item on an invoice. Like, if Acumatica is going to know about the GL code and its posting rules, etc., etc., you're going to want that in Acumatica, because otherwise, invariably, what you're going to either do is transfer that data in from another system into Acumatica and then finish the record off in Acumatica, Or what you're going to do is you're going to recreate a whole bunch of Acumatica logic in the third-party system, which really doesn't actually add value to anyone's life if you're recreating functionality in third-party systems.
So it really comes down to understanding the process, the business, and what makes the most sense in that scenario. Awesome.
And yes, sorry, that's a big thing as well, is customer requirement. I mean, there is no blanket absolute answer there at all.
Perfect, guys. I have a loaded one for you this time. So it says, why is having everything connected so important? I know this is a big one.
I know that's kind of been a theme of the whole presentation, you know, and I think when you're living that day in and day out, and in fact, I was working with a client the other day, and you know they're doing stuff in one system and turning around and someone's keying that in, you know, to your point earlier, Jamie, of the turn around and key it into another system. There's just a huge lack of efficiency with that. And it's prone to errors, and you know you're wasting time, you're wasting money, and you're never really getting clean, good data. And you know you have a lot of experience with that as well, Jamie. You know, we've kind of touched on that, but you know, what other things or issues do you see with it?
I think your points are spot on there. Like the reality is, if it's not part of the culture of the business, then we actually walk away from some deals where you can see that the business doesn't want it, and ultimately that's kind of life, isn't it? We get to make choices as we go along, and some of the things we choose are going to be wrong but right for us, and that's okay. So I would say, I would argue, having seen the efficiency that people extract, that there is efficiency in moving processes that can be moved into automation, into an automation framework. But like, if you're in a position where you're happy with the couple of extra staff you have and you're running a profitable business, then hey, profitable business, that's cool, you know, and that if you're in that position, then that's all good. I mean, the obvious answer is, you know, and the one I wouldn't go with is like, it's complete insanity not to go with automation, because that might just be your vibe, and that's okay. Like, there are a lot of benefits though, is your automated business processes. It eases up the burden on staff that are doing things manually, even if, and this isn't like replace staff with automation, even if it's just to free up their time so that they can focus on, as I say, thinking about what they're doing versus doing what they're doing. And that to me is always the breakover point. There is like, it makes, I like to think that we have a real world impact in terms of making people happier, because it means that they don't have to retype data in between systems, and like, no one gets a kick out of that.
Right, you're not out there trying to eliminate jobs. It's a quality of life, quality of life thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great point, guys. And then we've got another one. It says, does being on a modern ERP system make integrations easier?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. You know, you can obviously kind of shove a square peg into a round hole, and you can make anything work. And I'm sure you all have experience, Jamie, with making things work. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at like Acumatica as an example, you know, to have that open framework to be able to communicate with outside programs like that really kind of decreases the barrier to entry in those integration type of projects, I think.
Yeah, I would sum that up as, oh hell yeah.
I like it.
It just, everything about it is easier. Modern ERP, modern API suite, easier to integrate, easier to talk to between systems. It is, yes, definitely.
Okay, we have another one. Could you give an example of an integration and how that could help someone?
That's pretty broad, but I'll kind of toss that one back over to you, Jamie. And if maybe there's kind of a real world example that you all have done that's obviously that's your bread and butter, where it's really helped someone out.
So I can talk fairly high level to 3 examples there. So one was Acumatica to a third-party warehouse, a third-party logistics company. So the third-party logistics company had a custom solution in place. All of the deliveries were handled by the third-party logistics company. So we integrated all orders. So they were using the built-in Acumatica, I think it was Shopify, I stand corrected, integration. Then we were taking those orders into the 3PL system and then handling box sizes and all of the details that were needed to transfer to the 3PL solution. We did another integration where we integrated to a courier solution, so FedEx and DHL. So we went Acumatica to FedEx, Acumatica to DHL. So those were direct, not through a 3PL. So they were doing their own warehousing. And then we did a pretty advanced tight integration to Salesforce. So we took the full stock list, full stock availability, multiple price lists per customer, push that up to Salesforce with the customer records as well. Customer processed the entire order and pricing options and structure into an order on Salesforce, and then push that back down into Acumatica. And then we fed the completed invoice through the document API call, so you can upload PDFs to Acumatica. Or you can fetch PDFs out of Acumatica. So we fetched the finished invoice and put that back against the customer so that the salesperson had access to the PDF of the invoice.
Excellent. Yeah, and that's definitely a wide variety of kind of activities and solutions there. That's fantastic.
Okay, and it looks like we have time for one more question. And this one is going to be, are integrations for a new ERP system usually done in the first phase, or is that more of a second phase activity?
Yeah, that could be all of the above. And I'll kind of take a stab at it and then pass it over to you, Jamie, because from our standpoint, from a system integrator standpoint, a lot of times, we really like to, if you're going on a brand new ERP, to say, okay, we're going to get you off of the old system, we're going to get you onto the brand new ERP, and sort of an apples to apples transition in that you kind of minimize the shock to everyone's system, and obviously creating efficiencies where you can. And the idea really is to expedite or shorten that process of getting off the old and onto the new, and not turn it into a 12-month thing. We'd rather see it be a 4 or even 3-month project as opposed to a long thing, but continuing the momentum of that, and immediately, I wouldn't even call it phase 2, it's 1.5 or something like that, and rolling into those next level type of efficiency. So there's not a right or wrong answer to it, and Jamie, if maybe you want to talk to it from your experience as well, but it's really kind of about planning and the appetite of the business for it.
Yeah, and to me, it all comes back down to that burning issue question. So is your burning issue that you don't have integration? And I'm going to keep on using Shopify now just to pick one. Is your burning issue that your orders aren't coming in from Shopify automatically? Is your burning issue that you're stuck on a 25-year-old ERP that isn't enabling you to even pull reports? So it really comes down to fundamentally what your needs are and why you're moving. If you're moving for a more integrated environment, then you typically do deliver that up front. If you're moving for if you're moving for just to get the hell away from a piece of rubbish you're on at the moment, then then I would argue get the hell away from the piece of rubbish and then worry about the next burning issue as your 1.5. I quite like that.
Excellent. Yes, it really is about requirements and where to go with it. So excellent.
Yeah, thank you guys. Just to kind of really hammer home those points that Jamie kind of went over. Don't get paralyzed by that fear of getting started. Selecting the right tool for the job. Momentum versus perfection. We need to get some momentum instead of worrying about perfection at all times. Like I said, my background, continuously improve. Make it better. Do iterations of it. Don't get hung up and let that really kind of weigh you down. Make sure that you get that buy-in so that you're not running into those integration challenges later on of people being afraid of robots, being afraid that they're going to lose their job. It's really beneficial to a business to have your business running with everybody able to think. You hired smart people. Those people should have the ability to use their brains and to bring value to the business, not just hammering in data that they have on one spreadsheet into another spreadsheet. And then, the fourth integration point that we kind of spoke about was that customer centricity and that customer retention. Know your customer and do that through your data and your integrations. And then, of course, security. Security is always paramount. And that should always be something that you factor in. But that shouldn't be the only factor. It's a whole picture that we want everyone to leave with. So though, there are some integration challenges, there are real world fears, but don't let those hang you up and prevent your business from moving forward. Future-proof your business along with your software, because in today's rapidly changing environments, we all have to change. And that was some really great points that you brought up, Jamie and David. And so really appreciate you both sitting on the webinar. And if anyone on the webinar has any questions, please feel free to reach out to David. His contact information is on the screen, or Jamie. We're here to help, and we would love to speak with you.